Hi, welcome to today's webinar titled Software Built for Top-Down Improvement. My name is Jeff Roussel, and I'm the Vice President of Sales at KaiNexus, where we work to spread continuous improvement. This webinar is part two in a three-part series of demo webinars of KaiNexus, and I'm really excited to go through this topic with you guys today. Before we jump into it, let's talk a little bit about logistics. We're going to spend about 25 minutes on a presentation. I'm hoping I can stick to that time. And then we'll try to use the last 5 minutes to go through any questions that you guys submit. On the GoToWebinar panel, there's an option for you to submit a question. And you can do so at any time, and I'll try to get to those at the end. If not, I'll make sure that those are part of the recording link in the notes that are going to be sent out after this webinar via email. And so, yeah, with that, let's go ahead and get started. So I mentioned that I head up the sales efforts at KaiNexus, and I think it's important that we kind of start with why KaiNexus exists in the first place. Our mission is to spread continuous improvement, and we work really hard to do that for ourselves and for our customers. There's just a strong belief here that no matter who you are and what organization you're at, if you can start, spread, and sustain a culture of improvement, it's going to help you to achieve your goals and ultimately to do the things that you want to do. And so the challenge that most people have when trying to start and spread a culture of continuous improvement is really similar to the challenges throughout the business environment whenever we try to make change and make something happen. And that's what's called the golden triangle of people, process, and technology. And in the kind of the language of continuous improvement, that really fits as the leadership behaviors that you develop, the improvement processes that you create and maintain, and then the technologies that you use in order to kind of make things more efficient and make things easier. And it's important that you focus in all three of these areas because, for instance, if you're not really exhibiting the commitment needed around the leadership behaviors or the communication required, you're going to struggle. And if your processes aren't disciplined enough, if you're not meeting about improvement regularly, you'll find gaps. And the same goes for technology. You know, if it's not making things easier and more efficient, then it actually becomes a burden on the overall process. And so at KaiNexus, what we try to do is build a platform that connects the needs of collaboration with the requirements of reporting in one system so that, one, it's easier for your people to participate in improvement. They can collaborate more easily with one another around the improvement work that's necessary. But two, it's easier for your organization to make better decisions because you have the visibility needed in order to know the current status and try to get to a better future state. And so in KaiNexus, customers utilize our platform in some pretty specific focus areas. The first of those is strategy deployment. And that's really where you set some high-level goals within your organization and then visualize the work needed to achieve those goals as it cascades throughout your people. The second is the one we're going to focus on today, and that's the concept of top-down improvement. And that's really managing the critical goals and projects that are initiated by leadership within the organization. And the third, which was the subject of our last webinar, our last demo webinar, is bottom-up improvement. And that's really where you're engaging your people to identify opportunities to improve, and you're making change based on their suggestions. And so if the strategy deployment is interesting to you, I would invite you to join our next webinar in this series. And if the bottom-up improvement is interesting, then I would tell you to go to KaiNexus.com and download the copy of that webinar. Today, we're going to talk about top-down improvement. And so before we kind of get into the demo, let's talk a little bit about what top-down improvement really is. there's a difference between kind of doing top-down improvement and doing what traditionally people would just call bottom-up improvement. Normally, top-down improvement is going to be initiated by management. So it's really projects and goals that are required at a managerial level. And then it's your job to engage your team or engage kind of the bottom-up part to participate in these top-down projects. Next, it's typically limited in participants, where from a bottom-up standpoint, we're really trying to engage every employee in improvement. With top-down efforts, it's usually select people that are brought together to try to solve a specific problem. The frequency of top-down improvement is typically periodic. We're doing projects. It could be weekly, it could be monthly, it could be quarterly, it could be as needed, but it's typically not an everyday kind of ongoing event like bottom-up improvement is. And then the scope of top-down improvement is usually a little larger. We're talking about bigger projects, typically take longer to accomplish, maybe have a bigger kind of ultimate benefit, but also larger risk in that they're harder to accomplish. And also top-down improvement usually requires some sort of specialization in the maybe meeting facilitation that's required. Sometimes it's specific problem-solving techniques needed within the organization. But again, this is a little different than the bottom-up side where we're just looking for small, quick wins throughout our workforce. Now, the question is, how does software or technology kind of help in this regard? Well, as you're doing these top-down projects, one, software gives you increased visibility. So you see what's happening and you can make better decisions. It also makes it easier for your people to collaborate one another. I think we've seen and proven that email and spreadsheets are just the wrong systems to try to manage this type of work. Standards become a huge part of top-down improvement. As you're doing projects, it's important that you develop standards within your organization. That helps to kind of build consistency, and it helps when you're dealing with different people that are participating in these projects. And I think software and technology go a long way to that. They also really help in tracking impact. It's important to know the results of the work that you're doing. It's important to keep score, and technology really lends a hand here, especially in regard to top-down improvement. And then lastly, technology can really help to create a knowledge repository. It's important that the work that you're doing on these projects be maintained so future generations of employees can always fall back and learn something from that. And so, these types of benefits are really hard to get if you're not looking at software to try to help with your situation. Now, a couple of things we're going to look at today in specifically how KaiNexus helps support top-down improvement. The first is the concept of a network. Within KaiNexus, our customers build out a network to help them organize their people. This is essentially your organizational hierarchy, built out in a platform so that rules and regulations and workflows can be set differently for different parts of your organization. The next is we're going to talk a lot about custom templates. This is the ability to manage different project types in a system like KaiNexus and to customize that based on your individual methodologies. The third is roles. This is the different roles that people play using a technology platform like KaiNexus, both in terms of within a project, for instance, the role of leader or facilitator, and in terms of at a managerial level, which dashboards are required for different levels and roles within an organization. And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about resolution. And this is kind of the customized way in which you determine that you want to track impact on the projects that you're working on. And then one more, dashboards. Dashboards is essentially the way in which you visualize the work that's happening. So you see things before they get out of hand. We see problems early. We can reward employees for jobs well done. And we ultimately just have a firmer grasp on the current state so we can make better decisions moving forward. And so that's what we're going to go through today in this in the demonstration. I do want to mention, though, people ask me all the time, does this really matter? Does having kind of more efficiency around improvement really matter? And so I thought I would share this slide. Our current customers track the impact of their improvement work in KaiNexus, and we can see kind of the roll up of that information. But I look at a number like 1.6 billion and think, wow, this is, to me, as good as it gets as far as articulating the benefit of committing to continuous improvement and committing to doing it as efficiently as possible. And so if any of this is interesting in more detail, I'm happy to kind of meet with people individually after this webinar. But why don't we kind of take the time now and we'll look at a demo of KaiNexus and how it works in regard to the concept of top-down improvement. Okay, so we're looking at a version of KaiNexus created as a demo environment. For those of you who are not familiar with KaiNexus, we're a web-based software platform. We build our system based on feedback that we get from customers, and then our job is to help them kind of organize all of their efforts around continuous improvement. From a top-down perspective, most of that is done in kind of the day-to-day efforts around the projects that they do. One of the things I mentioned earlier was that templates become very important in top-down improvement. I think that it's extremely important to give people a simple way in which to manage the projects that they're working on. So I'm going to open one of the projects listed here on this dashboard, and we'll just take a look at a very simple template of a project that it was recently started, maybe 6 weeks ago. And really, this is one in which there's not a lot here. There's a description and a proposed solution. The team might work together to categorize the project properly and then use kind of the comments, et cetera, to work together to resolve this effort. I don't think this has to be very complex. I don't think it has to be complicated. And I think that having a customized template, very simple like this, gives people a way to work on easier projects that they're assigned to. Now, if we look at another project, perhaps this one entitled Part Presentations, we see a little bit more advanced template. This might be something that you would utilize for customers who have been through some training in your project management methodology and understand kind of the different ways to identify backgrounds and goals and current conditions and do root cause analysis in a system. That said, we still have kept this pretty simple. As you can see, there's nothing real complex here. It's easy to learn. It's easy to see. This one has already been categorized, so we know that it's part of our mission and culture strategic initiative. And we can even see some certain things like being able to set this project with customized milestones in order to create toll gates in order to help enhance the collaboration between the project manager and perhaps the process improvement group or the PMO group within an organization. But this is just an example of I would say, a relatively simple template in KaiNexus that was created just to help people manage their projects in an easier day-to-day fashion. What I will call out here, and you'll see it kind of in this comments thread, is that KaiNexus definitely becomes a collaboration platform here. There is a team of people that are assigned to this project, and there are specific dates that they're tracking, files, links, and pictures to be shared. And by using KaiNexus to assign tasks and make comments, one, we make sure that all of the information is kept in one place, and so it's easily searchable and easily findable. But also, it means that we don't have to go fight through email threads and try to track down certain spreadsheets in order to find out what's happening here. It's in one place. It's easily searchable, and KaiNexus will support it by providing notifications to people so that they can actually utilize our system to be more proactive in the projects they're working. And I think this is just a huge benefit. Personally, I love this part of the system. I use our notifications every day, and helps keep me on track with the projects in which I'm working. So now I'll actually look at an even more advanced template. This is a project called Storage Organization, and I'll expand this project. And what we'll see is this is in KaiNexus what's called a custom template. So we've actually built a custom template around the concept of an A3. And so you can see the different kind of sections of the A3. And this one, it kind of gives our clients the ability to create project templates based on really whatever methodology they use, but it also makes printing easier and can sometimes make training and developing standards more efficient. You know, if you do an A3 in your organization, having this standard template will help your people to kind of make that transition from paper to electronic. And I think there's huge benefits in being electronic, but we definitely realize that you have to overcome the inertia of using paper in the past. And so, again, this is what we would call a custom template. There are tons of opportunities here to create different types of projects, DMAIC projects, PDSA projects, just do it projects, you name it. If you have a custom methodology, you should reach out to KaiNexus and see if it's something where we could configure it in our custom template system. I'm guessing that we could. What's interesting to me is that projects can easily be converted from one template to the next. And so as you're kind of working on a problem, it might start out small, and then it might be something that we have to convert to a 5S or to an A3 or what have you. And being able to do that really gives you some flexibility in how you're going to manage this type of work. Now, we talked a little bit about kind of the roles within the project, and in this case, we've got some different roles, like who's responsible, who's the assigner, and who's the author. We might actually have other roles like facilitator and sponsor, etc. But I also think it's important to note that when we're working on projects, we can have an opportunity to resolve the work that we're doing. So in this example, if we're going to complete this A3, we can create some standards around how we want people to capture the impact of the work that they're doing. And I see this all over the board. Some customers are extremely simple here. They just want people to identify whether we made a safety change or maybe a customer satisfaction improvement. But others are much more advanced, and they want to track cost savings, and they want to track and really you can get as customized as you want here, but we can then track, for instance, that we're saving a certain amount of money, and we can track that we're saving a certain amount of time. And ultimately what this does is it adds up to a scoreboard where you can capture the impact of the work you're doing. So we'll get into that in a little bit on the reporting side, but I think that resolution component is an important part of doing top-down improvement successfully. And then lastly, I want to talk about, I'm going to go back into the storage organization one here. I want to talk about the concept of project ownership, because it becomes a really important concept in KaiNexus. What we see here is that this project, the storage organization project, is actually part of a much bigger project, in this case, a Kaizen event. For those of you who don't know what Kaizen events are, don't worry about it. It's just a project, essentially. It's gathering people in order to solve a specific goal. And this Kaizen event around order entry redesign is a project in and of itself. It's got its own team of people. It's got its own dates. It's got its own information that's being collaborated around. And then it has its own kind of steps and sub-projects. So we see the Gantt chart here of all the work that has to happen in this project. And then we see the individual steps being assigned as either improvements or tasks within this project. Again, if we look up a little higher here, this Kaizen event is actually part of a bigger initiative called Improving the Gemini Product Line. And then this Gemini product line is part of a bigger initiative that we're tracking around one of our True North goals called quality. And this brings us into the concept of dashboards. And so I am looking at a quality dashboard that now visualizes for me the work that we're doing around our quality goals. And you can see the product line project was in there, followed by the Kaizen event, followed by the Gimbal walk. And it's also helping me to see the metrics that we're tracking that are important to our quality initiatives. And if we talk a little bit about kind of bottom-up improvement, it's helping us to track the tactical steps that we're taking that roll up to quality. These are typically described in KaiNexus in a series of dashboards. So KaiNexus is designed around a very flexible framework of dashboards. You set dashboards up for the different roles of your people within your organization. So for instance, personal dashboards become an easy way for individuals to just track their work. Team dashboards become an easy way for a team to manage a group of people's work. And we can see that this is a very kind of simple, in this case, kind of a huddle board where we could keep track of bottom-up improvements or top-down projects that are being shared across a team of people. Then as we get a little higher in the organization, we start getting into concepts around strategy dashboards and project dashboards. Within KaiNexus, what we're trying to do is provide an opportunity to visualize work so you can make better decisions. So this is an example of a project dashboard. This is a high-level overview of all the projects as they roll up to our high-level initiatives, and all of the what are called attributes in KaiNexus or categories, and the ability to roll up projects into those different categories. So as we roll up information, we can see that the Lean Training and Certification Program has some overdue work. We can see that in the red part of this graph. The dashboards are designed to provide this kind of information. As I expand this dashboard, we can get into much more granular levels of detail to see the projects that we're working on, the financial impact of those projects, the status, and what I find to be extremely important, the state. With strategies around attributes, we are able to communicate like an and-on cord, where, for instance, whoever is kind of running this Gemini product line project can set their project in a certain state that will then communicate with executives that we're having a problem and I need some help. And by kind of combining an attribute strategy with a dashboard strategy, we're able to increase the collaboration and the visibility both up and down throughout the organization. Lastly, having this information available across the organizational hierarchy means that we can really create some standards around the top-down improvement work in our organization. So within KaiNexus, we create what we call a network, what other customers call it an organizational hierarchy. But it is your ability to map out the different parts of your organization and create very consistent dashboards for each of those. So I can have a dashboard for product management that highlights that group's information, and the same dashboard for marketing that highlights that group's information. And what this does is it really makes it easier for executives to be able to hone in on specific pieces of information. And it makes it much easier for the process improvement group within an organization to coach. Because we've created some standards of communication so we know when things are happening that could be potential problems, and we can head that information off at the pass. And as we're doing different projects throughout the organization, having the visibility of where problems pop up and knowing that as soon as possible really helps us to thrive in a top-down improvement environment. Lastly, we take a look at the reporting section. It is important to keep track of the work that you're doing from a project standpoint. We prescribe to a health check of information around 4 primary categories. One is the status. So for instance, I know the projects that we're working on, and I can kind of drill into the ones that are in various stages. I know that we have 4 overdue projects, and I want to see those overdue projects so I can lend a helping hand. It's important to be able to see the status and drill into the specifics. From there, we teach people to use the different reports around activity, engagement, and impact to make a health check on your improvement culture. Whether that manifests itself in bottom-up improvements or top-down projects just depends on your situation and your goal. But knowing the activity, the engagement, and the impact around those areas can really help you to make better decisions. It can really help you to guide the organization in the right direction. So that concludes our demo today. I am going to go through a couple of the questions that came up. One of them is about the recording. And so just so we're clear, anyone who registered for this webinar should receive a link to the recording afterward. And we'll try to make sure that everyone does that. If you don't, then please contact me. I'll show my email address in just a second, and I'll be happy to get that to you personally. We have another question that says, what project types are supported in KaiNexus? This one's a pretty open-ended question because with the configurable templates, I feel like really any project type is supported. We see customers doing DMAIC projects, PDSA projects, A3 projects. We see them doing evidence-based medicine projects. We see just general kind of project management methodology set up in KaiNexus. And we even see really simple projects that people with no project management training or experience can accomplish. And so I feel like if you've got a specific project type in question, please let us know, and I will be happy to assist with that. We have another question. How advanced can the impact tracking be? This one is an interesting one. We are kind of adding features around this all the time based on customer requests and feedback, but it can get pretty advanced if you wanted to. It can be done in multiple currencies. It can be tracked month over month. We're rolling out a feature very soon to be able to forecast impact and then compare that with actuals. And so, yeah, I do think that if you're in the business of tracking kind of very specific impact, then this is something that could play a part. And then I got a question here. How would we get our organization to this point? I'm assuming what they mean is how can we set up the how much work would it be to set up the platform for our organization? I would recommend reaching out to me individually and letting me explain that. We have a customer experience team at KaiNexus. Their job is to make this easy for people. And so I don't expect people to be able to take KaiNexus and make it look like we did in this demo environment right off the bat. But our team does that for you. And it's been a really powerful way in which we support our customers. So before we leave, let me kind of talk through a couple of the next steps here. We have upcoming webinars, one on May 7th. That's going to be about pets and vets. We have an animal doctor that's going to talk about applying lean in some unexpected places. And on May 24th, we're going to be doing the third in this series, which is strategy deployment software demo. So we'll talk about how to configure and use KaiNexus as you support strategy throughout an organization. And then other resources, I would tell you, if you're not already following the KaiNexus blog, you definitely should be. We also have a number of webinars on demand. This webinar will be on that page soon. We have ebooks that we've created. Our job is to spread continuous improvement, and our job is to be thought leaders in that concept. And I really invite you to check out KaiNexus.com and really give us feedback, help us understand how we can be better there. And then I would also tell you our podcast is fantastic. This webinar will end up on that podcast. If that's an easier way for you to consume information, please subscribe. You can do that via iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher. And again, would be very much open to your feedback on that. Okay, we already did the Q&A. And so I want to say thank you to everyone for your attention. I hope this was helpful. And I am looking forward to our time together next time. Have a great day.